filled with guilt. I'm filled with guilt when I see those things that Donna just showed you. I'm filled with guilt for the 26 years that I spent in the New Jersey State Police fighting this war and oppressing people unbelievably. Fighting a war that today I've decided is not only a dismal failure, but it's worse. It's a self-perpetuating, constantly expanding policy disaster that gets worse with every year. And it has to end. I felt so bad when I retired in 1991 from the state police. After 14 of those years I was undercover in narcotics. And about 1,000 young people went to jail as a direct result of what I did out there as one undercover agent. I don't know how many of those folks would have gone on to have a perfectly happy, healthy life had I not intervened, but I'm sure that number is huge. And I'll ask you, just like I ask all my audiences, just think of how many people you know personally who used an illegal drug when they were young, put them behind them, and went on to have a perfectly good life. You can do that as long as you haven't been arrested. We have a saying in the league, you can get over an addiction. You will never get over a conviction. A conviction will track you every day for the rest of your life because it's on a computer. You can move to another state in my country. You could even move to a different country. It doesn't matter. Every time you go to get a job, that employer looks at that record that's on that computer and says, hey, druggie, we don't want you. No. The only place you were wanted then is right back in the drug culture, the very group we say we're trying to save you from. So when I retired, I sat down with 4 other police officers and we created this organization, LEAG, or Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. We sat down and we said, what should we really want to do as law enforcers? And when we boiled it down to the essence, we decided what we need to do is we need to reduce death, disease, crime, and addiction. And sadly, folks, all 4 of those categories are just made infinitely worse by the war on drugs. So that definitely wasn't what we wanted. What we decided we do want is, as our name implies, law enforcement against prohibition. We want to end drug prohibition, just like we ended alcohol prohibition in the United States in 1933. Because as law enforcers, we understand that the day after we ended that nasty law, Al Capone and all his smuggling buddies were out of business. They were off our streets. They were no longer out there killing each other to control that very lucrative market. They were no longer killing us cops charged with fighting that useless war. And they were no longer killing our children who were caught in crossfires and drive-by shootings. Everything we experience today. So we know that if we end drug prohibition and legalize these drugs, we can completely remove the violence. And then when we regulate the drugs, we can do some other wonderful things. We can end overdose deaths. I can attest to the fact, after living 14 years undercover with those people, that nobody dies of an overdose because they shoot more and more dope. They die because they don't know how much of that tiny package of powder is really the drug and how much is the cutting agent. Too much drug and you're dead. And in an illegal, unregulated market, they will never know. We can end half of all potential cases of AIDS and hepatitis in the world. According to the Center for Disease Control in the United States, 50% of all new cases of AIDS and hepatitis can be traced directly back to drug users sharing needles. If drugs were illegal, they wouldn't have to do that, so we could affect these deadly diseases. And then, folks, if we started treating drug abuse as a health problem instead of a crime problem, we could actually help these young people whose lives we're destroying every day on this altar of a war on drugs. Bring them back into society. And shouldn't we want to do that? These are our children. These are our parents. These are ourselves. We didn't always have an illegal drug in the United States. By the way, when I started this organization, 5 Cops, that was 7 years ago. Today, we have 20,000. We're not just cops anymore. We're cops, we're judges, we're prosecutors, we're prison wardens, DEA and FBI agents. We have memberships in 76 countries. And now we've opened it up to the entire public. And I hope you, after you hear what I have to say today, I hope you all join us. We don't even ask for any dues or membership fees. We only ask for names of people that will support us. We want 1 million private citizens who agree with us by the next presidential election in the United States. If we get that, we're going to make changes in this. We really will change these laws. As I said, we didn't always have illegal drugs in the United States. As a matter of fact, until 1914, there was not an illegal drug anywhere in the United States. And as this ad from a grocery store in December 1901, you see up in the upper right-hand corner, as that depicts, if you had $4.85 in your pocket in 1901, you could walk into a grocery store anywhere in the United States and buy an ounce of pure heroin. Oh, we hadn't turned into a nation of drugged-out zombies then. And we're sure we won't do that if we re-legalize these drugs. But in 1914, for a lot of various reasons had almost nothing to do with drugs, my government decided they were going to make some of these drugs illegal. Actually, it was mostly based on racism, but I don't really have time to get into that with you. It's true. That was a big step for my government to say, what you put in your body is now going to become illegal. So they needed something to hang their hat on, something to convince the public that this was necessary. So they did a study, they said, and they discovered that 1.3% of the population was addicted to drugs. They said, we can't have that, we've got to make these drugs illegal. So in 1914, they passed the Harrison Anti-Drug Act, which made heroin illegal, and then over the next few years, they passed many more acts making drugs illegal. Let's fast forward ahead now, 56 years, and that's where I come into it. Actually, it was 1964 when I joined the New Jersey State Police. That picture in the upper left-hand corner is a picture of when I graduated that year. And right below it is more or less a picture of when I graduated from their narcotic bureau. Actually, that's one of the better pictures. I try and keep the bad ones off of there. It was 1970 when I went into narcotics. 1970 was the beginning of the war on drugs. The war on drugs was actually coined and created by Richard Milhouse Nixon in 1968, and it again had nothing to do with drugs, had everything to do with the fact that he was running for the presidency for the second time, and he thought this time it'd really be nice if we could win. Now, he knew if he was a strong anti-crime guy, it'd give him a lot of votes, but boy, if he could be in charge of a war on drugs, how those votes would pour in. So he started this war on drugs. And it worked, he was elected. By the way, these other pictures are just pictures of me undercover at different times in those 14 years.